So this afternoon we're going to talk about, I guess, a lot about gender diversity in the workplace, other kinds of diversity. You might have noticed it's quite a hot topic. I know in Korea it's a big topic of conversation too. Low representation of women at senior levels in the workplace. Everything that's happened with Me Too. So we figured it would be quite interesting to bring together people from different parts of the world to talk about their experiences, because different cultures, different societies have different challenges and issues, and we often talk about diversity in our own bubble, whether it's in Korea, whether it's me writing in the UK. So we've got our panelists, we've got someone from Japan, someone from Sweden, and someone from India, three very different contexts, I think. So I just wanted to kick off and just get everyone on the panel to maybe chat a little bit about the situation in their own country. Maybe starting off with Japan, because I know that things are tough, but the government is intervening.
Yeah. So in Japan, probably same as Korea, we are kind of bad children in the gender equality or the gender gap field. Currently, Japan gender gap in ranking is only 114th. And then the Prime Minister trying to change this situation, and he's running the project called Society That Women Can Thrive. And then I think in Japan we have pretty good maternity leave system, like a woman can take from 1 year to 1.5 years. And then also, government is trying to increase the number of the nursing schools so that, the mother can leave the kids to there and it can work. However, the gender gap ranking actually for Japan is keep falling in the past 5 years. With this effort, it's keep falling. And then the reason is that we have a pretty good system, we have a pretty good law, but it seems like the mindset and the culture is still back behind. So if the things changing for sure, but it's not as fast enough than the rest of the world. So that's things.
And what about India?
Just to give you a context, in India, women are fighting for some of the basic human rights, like education and healthcare. So when it comes to work, it's almost seen as an indulgence that, she can work till she gets married or she has a baby, and then she'll take care of the family. And perhaps that's the reason why we have maximum dropout mid-career.
Right.
So I don't want to get into a competition, but we're 104 in ranking out of the 148 countries or whatever. And that's terrible. But government is taking initiatives. I think they've revised the Maternity Benefits Act from maternity leaves from 3 months to 6 months, to asking companies to give flexi hours, asking companies to tie up with creches, which is mandatory. So they're trying to do a lot to get working women who've taken a maternity break to come back and work again. So that's happening.
And Sweden, I guess, is sort of held up as this sort of golden child of equality and progress. What's the reality like?
Yes, unlike India and Japan, many of the very fundamental rights are in place, and there is, when it comes to the working environment and the conditions, it's set up the way it should be. Although I think we also have a way to go still, because it's still the matter of a lot of guilt, I think, from women, that even if women in Sweden, they will go back to work after having kids. Everyone works, and they are allowed like 1.5 years maternity leave or parental leave. to share with the father. But still, you know, you want to be the good mother, you want to make the home-cooked food, you want to pick up your kid early from school. So it's still the balance that is really, really hard to fix.
And I was wondering if any of you on the panel would be willing to share your own, you know, experiences. Have you felt that you've experienced any barriers in your own career, or perhaps you know, been really supported?
The latter, the supported. I had a baby 5 years back, and I think when I was pregnant, I had the best time at work. Like, everyone was trying to take care of me, right from my colleagues to my boss to my client, and trying not to, you know, have too much of debate with me, which really worked as a creative person for me. I could get away with a lot of things. But I did get a very supportive environment even after I came back. I don't know why, but I did.
And yeah, so I guess perhaps the reason that this year the conversations in the ad industry around the workplace have become somewhat more serious, probably because of the Me Too movement. I was just wondering if that has had much of an impact in any of your local industries.
Okay, yeah. When it comes to the Me Too movement, I think that it happened pretty quickly in Sweden after it sort of got started and there was a group of women in the advertising industry that came together, and they wrote an article in the biggest newspaper in Sweden, and telling stories about what they had experienced in their different agencies. And it was anonymous, so it wasn't like people were pointed at, but it truly showed that it is a very common thing to experience different forms of sexual harassment in the workplace in our industry. So what happened after that was that they published all these stories also on a website, and they encouraged all agencies in Sweden to post their plan. You know, what are we going to do now with this? How are we going to secure a safe working place, an equal working place? And I would say that all major agencies in Sweden have done that, and they have been published on the website, and it has moved to become a big discussion within the agencies, and so it's been very positive, I think.
Well, when it comes to Japan, Me Too movement is how I can recognize in our society, and then it's kind of, there is a few, yes, brave women come forward and say it in public, but in general, there is, I would say, no Me Too movement in Japan at this point. And then I've been thinking about the reason for a while, and one of the reasons is that Japan as a society, the peer pressure is always enormous. So and also like our culture is a very much high context culture. So as a manner, it is important to read between lines, or in Japanese we say, read air. So read air means, you without saying anything, you just recognize the atmosphere and then go along with it as a manner. So it's really difficult in this context to speak up, whatever that they experience, and especially in the industry like men dominated most of the senior position. In this industry, it's really, really hard to speak up. So I would say there is hardly any Me Too movement in Japan.
Well, in India, before the Me Too movement, there was a Nirbhaya case, which was spoken about everywhere, all over the world, which was about a young girl being brutally raped and murdered. Since then, a lot of cases have come out, and people have been talking about harassment of girl, children, women. Yeah, there's a lot of debate on that, but specific to Me Too, if it's about women coming out and men in high ranks losing their jobs, I don't think so. That's far and few between. But a lot of preemptive steps have been taken. Like at our office, we've done a gender sensitization workshop with the entire office, telling them what is appropriate and what is not appropriate, what could be seen as offensive. And every office is required by law to have an ICC committee, which is Internal Complaints Committee, to which you can take any form of harassment, and the committee is required by law to take it up.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and that's run by the people of the agency along with NGO representation, so that is there.
Wow, it's quite quite a thorough program then.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and also now because the extent of harassment, which is beyond work, the government has also become very stringent with the punishment. So now if a minor is raped, it is life or death, depending on it. So yes, there are a lot of stringent actions being taken, and even at workplace there are committees set.
And so I'm just curious to know as well, so obviously talking about the workplace, we're talking about ad agencies, and to what extent, and this is perhaps a bit of a loaded question because it is a very undiversely entirely female panel, but what are you seeing, what sort of steps do you think men need to take, whether it's just becoming like more involved as parents or whatever, what sort of involvement do you think is happening or could be helpful, guys?
Well, I think you're right. Diversity starts with both. And I think now Indian men are leaving the macho image and showing their softer side. So, you have Shah Rukh Khan, who's one of the biggest Bollywood stars, and he's being constantly photographed with his 5-year-old or 6-year-old child, and he's constantly with the baby when he's going to work or when he's at a cricket match. So there is a lot, so the image is changing of Indian men. And I saw in this conference, one of the judges had come with a baby and her husband had come with her. And that was so positive to see that he was taking care of the baby while she was judging. And also I met another girl, a Sri Lankan girl. I don't know whether she's in the room. And oh yeah, there she is at the end. And she's come with a baby and her husband's taking care of her while she's sitting here watching her speak. So yeah, I think things are changing.
And we were talking earlier, and you had some really shocking statistic about women who do work in Japan.
Right.
And it's a double shift that they seem to do.
Well, so there is a quite, I would say, interesting research that 80% household carrying children in Japan was done by women, and then men only taking less than 20% of the household and carrying children.
Surely not.
And then right now, most of the women start to working outside of the home. So it seems like they are taking a double shift, working 8 hours, and then the follow up with another 8 hours at home to working to taking care of all the stuff. But I think the change is happening as well. It was one of the happy moments when I was at the agency early this year. One of my male art director came over to me, and he actually said, I really want to take a paternity leave for 2 months. And that was like the first moment for me that men taking a paternity leave in my career. And I was like, oh yes, for sure, yes, you should. And I was like, then I started wondering how many people really want to take a paternity leave in my team. And technically, everybody want to take a paternity leave at this point. So I think it was a really good change is happening in the younger generation. So I kind of hopeful,
Yeah, and in Stockholm, in Sweden, I see how now, and it's changed because I have a 9-year-old daughter, and even since the time when I was home with her, I see a big change in the past few years where it's very common now that couples share the parental leave in half. So and it's a struggle for the HR department with all the parental leave, but they now many fathers take like 8 months, maybe first the mother 8 months and then the father another 8 months. But that is Stockholm, that is the most progressive part of Sweden, and it's a very progressive industry. So I wouldn't say that it's common all over the country, but I think it's coming.
But it's sort of interesting as well. I mean, this sort of idea of making space for whether it's family life or people who don't have kids, like their life. It seems like maybe Japan and Sweden are sort of quite opposite ends on the spectrum, because obviously Japan has had, the advertising agencies even have been in the news about people being overworked, people even dying. Yeah, and I was just wondering, how do you think that feeds into a kind of unequal or undiverse workplace, putting people off?
Yeah, well, so it's still the longer hours working is a pretty norm in Japan and in most of the advertising agency. And even like we have a contract, we start to work 9 o'clock in the morning and finish by 5 o'clock. And then, some of the mother, trying to leave the office at 5 o'clock. And most of us previously consider that person is not the full-time. Although she's leaving at 5 o'clock, yes, it's a full-time, but, lots of us taking a look at her as she's not the full-time. And then that is like a wrong, I think, perspective over the, the in general working environment. So I think what we are trying to do is, as a government, as a corporation, we try to really minimize our, working hours. Shouldn't be overloaded. And then every time somebody overworked, right now I got the warning email: somebody working overtime. You have to do something as a boss to taking care of your team, and that's the system is to start working. But it's not happening kind of not bluntly from the system, but we change the room, now follow the room, and that kind of things we are trying to do right now.
And I guess on the other hand, can it go to the other extreme as well? When you're an agency, to an extent, you still need people to put the hours in when it's needed, I guess.
We see that a little now. I mean, I think it's a generation thing as well, that we find that the young generation, they have a different perspective on their work-life balance than maybe I had when I was in my 20s, when I was happy to work, every night and every weekend, and whatever could help me in my career, I would do it. And they are much more, well, I have something planned, I'm going to go to a concert, or we're going to do this and that. And of course, I mean, we do want to be a workplace where people can have a life outside of work. I think that's very important, but there will also always, I think, in this line of work, be moments where you have to work a hell of a lot. I mean, you have to be there all night through to get it done, or you have a presentation, you need to. So yeah, I think there is a risk, definitely, that I don't think that you will produce groundbreaking, amazing work if you're not willing to put in some extra hours here and there. But it shouldn't be every week and the routine.
And sort of moving on to the actual stuff that the stuff that you make. You know, there's a lot happening at the moment around stereotypes in the actual ads and content. There was this sort of Unilever-led Unstereotype Alliance and things like that. I'm so curious to find out how you think the advertising in your country actually speaks to diverse audience. And I'd love to start with you, Vasudha, because I've noticed a lot of Indian creative over the last couple of years.
Yes.
That's like, some of it's tackling really serious issues like Touch the Pickle, and then there's stuff like, there's a woman on a motorbike, she's so empowered.
Yes.
And I just wonder, from your point of view, what sort of impact that has.
A couple of things on that. I think the first and foremost, no one is doing anyone any public service. Clients realize women are taking financial decisions, and I read somewhere that globally 80% of women are actually the ones who spend the money. So I think clients are waking up to that fact that they need to take women seriously. Also, of course, it's reflective of the society, and at the moment there are a lot of women issues being raised by women, so the clients and agencies are cognizant of that. But I don't know whether they're just lip service or actual initiatives that are being implemented. I don't know that. But personally, I'm glad that such narrative exists in whatever capacity, because they could help change behavior. Because when I was very young and growing up in advertising, I think we weren't just fighting patriarchy at workplace. We were fighting patriarchal patriarchal outlook of women, of how it was being portrayed. I was told by many men as a young writer that women love washing machines and they fall in love with washing machines. And
Are you saying that you don't?
No, I hope not. Like, you know, that would be very strange, you know. Also, think of it, it makes a very funny commercial, but no one has done that or made light of it. And I wouldn't get it. I would say, but why would women love washing machines? Like, you don't get it. You're just 1%. They love their washing machines because it helps them clean their clothes. It's like, it helps them clean their clothes. That's it. So I'm glad it's changing. Or people are talking about it, but I'm not sure. But a few years down the line, I rather not see them or hear them as women empowerment ads. I rather see them as, or people say that, oh, that's a slice of life ad, you know. There's no manpowerment ad. I don't see anyone say, oh, that's a manpowerment ad, you know. So, yeah.
What about in Japan?
Well, I think, one of the really interesting example is actually your agency produced the Volvo campaign, and it's a global campaign. So 2 minutes film cut down into the 15 seconds and it aired in Japan. And then one of the very short sequence actually showing the gay couple is having a comfortable time with driving Volvo. And that was actually picked up a lot of person in Japan, And then I overheard from one of the Volvo's people said, there's quite few, not quite few, many couple came over to the Volvo stores and they recognized the little change in their 15 seconds. It's literally less than 3 seconds, but see that, and then that they were so happy with it. So not in the context of the LGBTQ, not in the context of the diversity, but the everyday life, those diversity or the expression of the diversity isn't appearing. People are really, for sure, picking up. And I think that's the important thing. So not, when the topic is about LGBTQ, yes, it is about LGBTQ, but if every day is spot picking up a reality of our society, of the diversity, and I think that's the important things to do.
And do you in Sweden, does it feel that the content is like representative and?
No, I think we all have to do better, and I think when we gather in these kinds of festivals or award shows, we we always premiere, the groundbreaking big ideas. But I think there is a big work to do around, just representation, and it's in the details, and it's in constantly asking yourself when you have a script, why is this character a man? Why is it a woman? Why is it a white person? Why is it? What would happen if this was a gay couple? Would it disturb the story we're telling, or would it add something? And when you start turning all these things around, that's, I think, when brands become truly diverse. It's not something they put out there for a specific, that they want to say something about women for a campaign. It's something they constantly do. And every time I sit with a script and do that, I find that there are many things that could be turned around.
And I'm also just curious, in each of your local markets, in your local ad industries, what are the other sort of challenges around, I guess, diversity and access, outside of just the sort of obvious gender things, like whether it's socio-economic, ethnic, or religious? Is there anything to add?
Well, again, India is really complex. Every 100 kilometers, the cuisine and the language dialect changes. So, of course, you need more and more people from different socioeconomic classes, from different regions. Many years back, there used to be a trend of, cool, English-speaking creative people only, but that trend has changed. And now we have, people have fallen in love with the national language and regional languages. So agencies are more receptive to people from different strata speaking different languages. It's okay if they can't speak in English, because as long as they can speak in Hindi and can do great work, it's great. And yes, we're open, but I think the challenge is deeper. It's trying to get younger people in advertising now, because there's so many access points, and I think that would be the bigger challenge. Yeah.
And what's the situation in Sweden?
We have the agency. I think when it comes to equality, it's getting there, and the industry is getting there. But of course, we have a lot of Swedes in the agency, and we work for global brands, and we would love to have more diversity when it comes to culture and when it comes to race. That is not in place. And socioeconomic backgrounds are also pretty similar, because it's kind of expensive to go to advertising school, and maybe you can't afford it if you're from a less fortunate class or so. But we look forward to getting better at that. We are opening in Singapore now and are hoping to attract some Asian people in our agency, yes.
I didn't know that. And what about Japan? What are the other challenges?
So Japan, the economy is declining. Social economy background. Well, there is two divided people, like kind of rich people and poor people, and that was like a challenge for a Japanese for the first time in the history. Like we are always like in the middle types of the. Everything is trying to be average types of the society. And then also we have the challenge for our society at this point is like our population is declining. So in fact, Japan as a country is shrinking by itself. And then so that means we have a less workforce than when they come to the younger generation. All of the agency probably have the same problem, that the more senior people and the younger people are less. So less junior in our agency, the mid-level, sometimes that's equal number of the junior and the senior. So that's the challenge for us, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is. So yes, obviously the gender is a number one issue for sure, but that's because of the population dynamics is going down. I think our challenge is like how we can maintain our workforce as well as our business size in future. Yeah.
And I guess to wrap up on a sort of positive note, I just wondered if any of you had any examples of like schemes either within your own agency or within your local market that you thought were really useful and that maybe people could learn from?
Yeah, I do one, which is at BBH, India. We used to be 70-30 in ratio, but certain steps were taken to ensure that we have an equal representation of men and women. So now we are 50-50, and how that came about is a conscious decision taken by management. Every time we were looking for a talent, we would tell the headhunters that we would want both male and women CVs. We just didn't want one. We just didn't want a male CV. We would want to see both. And that was a conscious decision taken. And if in talent both were equal, then we may choose the woman over the man, if they were equal in talent. So today we are 50-50, but that doesn't mean we stop. That has to be a continuous process. You can't say, okay, we've reached it, so now move on. So we are continuing with it. We at BBH, we have a tie-up with creches so that working new mothers can keep their babies and go in between and meet. We have flexi hours, and we've given it, and some women have taken it when they've the baby was staying a little out of town or with the mother or something. So yes, certain things have been incorporated.
Cool. Any other things that are giving you hope?
Well, okay, so I went to a biggest Japanese advertising conference 2 months or 3 months ago, and then when I take a look at the room, it was a sea of Japanese men. It was like I was like a 5% of the women, and then 95% of men. And I took my one of the young female creatives together with me, and she was saying, well, it's kind of depressing, isn't it? It was like, yeah, it is, but you know, flip side is for us, it's a pure blue ocean as an opportunity, right? As being a woman in this market, I think we should take this as an opportunity. And then when it comes to the diversity, it's a lot of things we can do possibly. So let's take a look in the positive side and being unique in this industry. And as you said, yeah, I kind of agree. And so, you know, I think, and then also then as a McCann Tokyo, we are hiring new grads. 80% of the new grads are women at this point. So I think what we are doing is a pretty right things to do. And I think the other agency are going to do the same as well. So that's, I think,
Cool.
I hope so.
You got anything? Or?
Yeah, well, I was thinking of one to add the diversity in backgrounds in the agency. We have a scholarship at the agency where we look for people who might be interested to work in our industry but don't have the education or any experience. And so they can apply, and then we pick a few every year that we pay to be in the agency for 6 months. And it has been super inspiring, and we found people that I think would never have come to the advertising industry, and they are now, they have got scholarships to go to school, and there are even a few that we've hired. So that is, it's a small thing, but it's at least something.
No, it's all baby steps. So yeah. Yeah. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. I certainly just really love to hear all the different perspectives and around the world. So yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to
Thank you.
you as well.
Thanks.